Let's go to our expert hotline here on All Bets Are Off and talk to a young man that I actually had the pleasure of watching growing up as a little fella in Northwest Ohio. He co-wrote the piece on Deadspin as we welcome Tim Burke to All Bets Are Off. Tim Burke, how are you?
Good, dog. How are we doing?
I'm good. Tim's father, Mike Burke, a very dear friend of mine, and Mike grew up here in Lorain. And when I started my career, Mike was my color analyst partner in Division II, Division III, high school football and basketball. And so it's been a long time, Tim Burke. But your mom and dad are in Florida now, I understand?
Yeah, they are claimed to be retired down here, but they're doing more work now than they ever did back in Ohio.
Yeah, Mike and Jane Burke, give them my very best, please. And I do need to owe them that phone call so we can catch up. Tim, I'm so pleased that you took a few minutes here. How long you been with Deadspin, Tim?
I started there in October of 2011, so a little over a year.
Okay, and right off the top, again, this is absolutely a fascinating and riveting. Tim, how did this come to your attention at Deadspin to start with, that there were certainly some inaccuracies, some peculiarities involved with the Manti Te'o story on the passing of his grandmother and allegedly the same of the girlfriend? How did all of this start to not add up for you at Deadspin?
Well, you know, we get a lot of crackpot anonymous tips in our emails every day, and most of them we just ignore. This one, for whatever reason, my co-writer, Jack Dickey, and I decided to check out. And, you know, all we did was Googled the name, Manti Te'o, his alleged dead girlfriend. Mm-hmm. And the Google results were all articles about her being his dead girlfriend. And there was nothing else. There were no, online profiles. There were no YouTube comments. There were no traces of her having had a life, only that she existed in death. And we thought that was pretty curious. And at least it was enough for us to start checking out, some of the details that had been published about her, that, like, she was a Stanford student. Some places said that she graduated from Stanford, so we checked in with Stanford. We checked in to see if she'd been buried in Carson, California, like one article said. And we checked in all the details, and what we learned was that the reporting on the Manti Te'o and Manti Te'o story was so all over the place that there were inaccuracies, contradictions, and things that flat out, her date of death was listed 5 different ways in 5 different articles. Mm-hmm. And we said, this is not a coincidence. So it's just, poor type editing. There's something wrong here.
Yeah. Timothy Burke joining us. Tim, a co-author. He works for Deadspin.com, and they, of course, did as Tim just said, a large amount of the research on this. Oh, Tim, when you talk about inconsistencies, I've heard in a couple of places now. In Manti Te'o, did he say at one time that he actually had met Manti Te'o at Stanford, or did he or didn't he? Was this strictly online through a website, or has he ever or alleged to have laid eyes on this young woman?
Well, all the stories about how they met, that they allegedly met in 2009 after the Stanford game, which we know now wasn't true because he doesn't exist. We know that those came from Manti Te'o's father, Brian. Mm-hmm. And we learned today that many of the inaccuracies and flat-out fantasy parts that appeared in Pete Thamel's Sports Illustrated cover story that ran the 1st of October, most of those details were verified by Brian Te'o as well. So the question really comes down to, was Brian Te'o making up details about his son's fake relationship, or was Manti lying to his dad about having this girlfriend and the thing they were doing?
Yeah, interesting. I'm sure you saw, and Timothy Burke is our guest. He is a writer for Deadspin.com. Tim, I'm sure you saw Jack Swarbrick, the athletic director from Notre Dame, yesterday get very, very emotional when discussing the character and integrity of Manti Te'o. Are you surprised at Notre Dame's approach to this, and do you feel that the university, are any way culpable, Timothy?
Well, I think that press conference was a huge disaster. I think it didn't do anything to settle any concerns or questions about Manti Te'o, and it created a whole new tub of content for us to talk about, taking the focus away from Manti Te'o being a great linebacker and NFL prospect, and instead reminding people this is Manti Te'o, guy with the fake dead girlfriend. Mm-hmm. And for Notre Dame's sake and for Manti's sake, the best thing for them to do is to stop talking about it at all, because they can't win. If you admit that you were somehow in on the scam, you look like a bad guy.
Yeah.
And if you say, I was completely hoaxed for a year into thinking that this girl really existed, you sound naive and gullible.
Yeah.
So don't say anything.
Right. No, I understand. Timothy Burke joins us, Deadspin.com contributing editor. Tim, today, and I thought that now the word was that they were Manti Te'o was going to give, much like Lance Armstrong, that we're going to see with Oprah Winfrey tonight, gave Jeremy Schaap the opportunity to interview him today. Now, that, though, the kibosh was put on that, correct? That didn't happen or is not going to happen. Is that right?
It's not going to happen. And that's unfortunate, because I think that that's the one good news Oprah's had today. We'll say that.
That's right. Ratings in mind. Yeah.
We would have all liked to hear that. And I hope for Manti's sake, because he's as far as I know, he's a good guy. He believes very much in his family and his faith. I hope for his sake that he is sort of he's heeding my opinion about what he needs to do, and just not talk about it. And in the future, people are going to pester him about questions, and he can just respond with no comment. People are going to eventually get tired of asking the questions, because what happens when, no matter what situation you're in, if you go on for years and years saying the same thing, in response and trying to actually answer the questions, you end up like Lance Armstrong. And in his situation, his best bet is to lay low.
Very, very fascinating. Timothy Burke, we're delighted that he's joining us, contributing editor from Deadspin.com. As far as Manti Te'o himself and what he has said about it, I mean, Tim, as you just alluded to, I mean, Notre Dame, there were candlelight vigils being, I think, at least 2 different times after football games this year with regard to support for Manti Te'o. But again, does your gut tell you that this has been a complete hoax, that he was duped and perpetrated upon? Could there be a case, though, Tim? Does a part of you believe that Manti Te'o was involved with this and had plenty to do with the whole perpetration of this fraud?
I'm not really in a position to say that. But I do think that there are certain things that are clear and not debatable about the way that he went about things. And that's that he certainly, even if he was taken for the hoax the whole time, he certainly, played up the degree of their relationship and did not make any attempt to clarify or to correct any of the errors that his father was putting out there about how they met and the nature of their relationship. He had plenty of opportunities to do that throughout the season, and even up until the January 3rd, when he was doing his press conference before the BCS championship game, he was making comments about, he was responding to questions about his girlfriend. If anything, if he is as innocent as he claims he is still guilty of those things.
Although none of this is of a legal nature of any kind, as we chat with Timothy Burke, contributing editor at Deadspin.com. Tim, are you or any members of your staff, are you efforting to try to speak to Manti Te'o or with anyone else involved? What is your next thrust at Deadspin with regard to follow-up on this?
Well, we attempted to contact Manti before we published the story, and we also contacted his father and the University of Notre Dame football communications office.
Okay.
And none of them issued any statements to us. Seriously, in the grand scheme of things, as big of a story as this seems to be, it doesn't. Finding out the truth about exactly what Manti Te'o knew, what did he know, and when did he know it? Is that really going to change anything at this point? Is that going to accomplish anything? what's my concern, and I think the concern of my colleagues at Deadspin.com, is going out and finding how these lies were perpetuated, how people continue to print them, and how so many journalism mistakes were made.
Yep. Yep.
And we've tried to publish several articles on that today. Mm-hmm. Is that, where did fact-checking go? Where did actual investigative journalism go? Mm-hmm. Because so many of these mistakes should have been red flags immediately to anybody sort of looking at what was published, and nobody caught it. Yeah. So, those are the sorts of things that we can point to and create change and improve things. And so we're mostly concerned with that part of the story at this point.
Yeah, no, I can understand that from a journalistic standpoint. Tim, by the way, went to Ohio University, so he's a proud Bobcat, and kind enough to join us today from Deadspin.com as a contributing editor. Timothy.